On today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, we have our Week 13 waiver wire targets with fab bids. I am your host, Shaun Moran, and joining me on this fine Monday night are my co-hosts Keegan Thompson and Aidan Holler. I just spent 2 hours of my life watching that Bears and Vikings game. I'll never get those 2 hours back, but what are you going to do? Spend time with your loved ones? Keegan, how are you doing today, man?
I'm all right. Getting back to work after a 4-day weekend was pretty brutal, I must say. But got to cap off the Monday with some football. Whether it was the kind of football we wanted, I don't really care. Football is football. So happy to be here. We're Week 13. I'm all right. My vibes are better than the last time I was on the pod. That's for sure.
I feel just like exhausted. After that game. I feel worse now than I have like during some of the losses this year. I'm just like, what an exhausting experience. I hate Lugetzky so much. I can't keep watching these games. It's like 3 screens in a row. Just like, it's so predictable, so vanilla, and it's just like, we won today and we learned absolutely nothing about Justin Fields. Like, truly nothing about Justin Fields. So it is what it is. I had a decent fantasy week, which was good. I think I secured 2 first-round buys. So that was big. That was pretty big. But no, the Bears are just like kicking me in the nuts every single week. And it's just like, I can't run from it. I just keep coming back for more.
I can't run from you in fantasy. I scored 165 points against Aidan and lost by 40. So that was fun.
That was big.
That was fun.
I don't think I've lost to either one of you this year. I don't.
Oh, I got you in Dynasty.
Losing by 40 after putting up 160 is just such a bad feeling. That is like all-time bad vibes.
I had multiple losses over 140. I had multiple losses over 140 this week. Scored 140, lost 150 and lost, and 160 and lost. So I don't feel that great right now, guys. I don't know if I have that dog in me. I don't know. No. I don't run from the grind. Never run from the grind here.
Never. 10 toes, baby. 10 toes.
10 toes. Before we dive into the Week 13 waiver wire, today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Right now, you can put your fantasy knowledge to the test and win cash prizes in Underdog's Pick'em Lobby. Underdog's Pick'em Lobby is centered around player stat predictions, where you string together a minimum of 2 or a maximum of 5 correct entries on a respective player's higher or lower projection. For example, last Thursday, if you had taken Christian Watson's higher half touchdowns, Tony Pollard's higher 3 receptions, and Zach Charbonnet's 3.5 higher receptions, you would have 10x'd your money. And that is precisely what listeners of the Regression to the Mean podcast did when they used promo code RTM on Turkey Day with their Pick'em Lobby prediction. And you can get on the action by downloading the Underdog Fantasy app and signing up again with promo code RTM. If you use that code, you can double your deposit up to $100. Stay tuned for our Pick'em prediction for Week 13 later in the week. New ad read, guys. What do you guys think? It's pretty good, right?
I like that. That was
trying
good.
Something new. Trying something new.
Yeah, you're smooth with that one.
Trying something new. Keegan, how much did you win on Pick'em this weekend? What was that ticket?
I had a very nice Pick'em slip. So the week prior, I put in a 5 Pick'em slip. I missed by 1 pick, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let that get me down. I'm going to get back to it this past Turkey Day, or I guess Turkey Day weekend, whatever you want to call it, and put in 5 picks, walked away with $600. And you too, listeners, could walk away with a 5 Pick'em slip from Underdog if you just put in promo code RTM and match that first deposit.
We are 2 weeks from the fantasy playoffs, and every single decision we make is critical. And I had to double check this 3 different times. We have 6 teams on a bye this week. 6 teams we're going to need to get to the wire to help us clinch a playoff berth. This is not a great time for bye weeks. This is nut crunch time, boys. And Roger Goodell has us in a chokehold with these buys. And these aren't just your, run-of-the-mill NFL teams. We have the Bills on a bye. We have the Ravens on a bye. We got the Vikings. We got the Bears. We got the Giants. We got the Raiders. How many fantasy starters are on those 6 teams? Like a shit ton, a plethora, whatever descriptive term you want to use. So I have a team where I have multiple Ravens, multiple Bills, and multiple Bears. So this is going to be a really fun week for me. And I have Chris Olave on this team as well. So lots to parse through with those bye weeks, lots to parse through with these injuries. It wasn't a huge injury week for week 12 here. I already mentioned Chris Olave. Chris Olave left the game with a concussion. It looked like he was going to have his monster breakout week, and we lose half of that because of a concussion. Rashid Shaheed, the other Saints wide receiver that isn't Michael Thomas, who's already hurt, injures his thigh. He's already doubtful for week 13. Olave's status is up in the air. We had Amari Cooper injure his ribs. I don't know his status. We'll see as the practice reports start to come out. Dorian Thompson-Robinson with a concussion. And Demario Douglas, possible concussion. I guess they ruled that he didn't have a concussion, but we'll have to see after the fact. Not an insane amount of injuries, but I don't know. Chris Olave going down right when you need him is not ideal. Not ideal for him. So
yeah,
not a ton to work through in injuries, just a ton to work through with buys. So we're going to help you here on the Waiver Wire Target Show. We have our Week 13 Waiver Wire targets with fab bids. Again, if you are new to this Waiver Wire episode, we have a lot of new subscribers that came in last week. Thank you for being a part of the mean team. Waiver wires are pretty simple. Usually we're looking for players that are owned in less than 35% of sleeper leagues, but understanding there's so many buys, everyone's leagues are a little bit different. We're going over that 35% threshold, and we're just going to go after the guys that we think are the best available options here on the waiver wire. Kicking things off with running backs. Is that where we want to start? Start with our meat and potatoes?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get after it.
I love that, Aidan. You're always the most ready to go. I'll leave it at that.
I'm trying tonight. It's like a level down, but I'm still here.
The first guy that I think people should be picking up off the waiver wire in week 13 is none other than Jeff Wilson. He dropped the Wilson Jr. here on Sleeper. But then it's Jeff Wilson Jr. here, so I'm in a blender. Jeff Wilson had the 30th most valuable role in week 12. And I'm getting all this data here from Fantasy Points. He's rostered in 18% of leagues. He was in healthy scratch in week 11 when Devon Achane was supposed to play. They had Salvon Ahmed as well. But in week 12, he had a pretty good role. He played 33% of the snaps. He had 30% of the attempts. He ran 20% of the routes, and he had 10% of the targets. So I don't really know what to make of it. Devon Achane seems pretty likely to play this week in week 13 against the Washington Commanders. I don't know if it's a guarantee by any means, but it sounds like they were being overly cautious considering they had a short week with Black Friday against the Jets. Best case scenario for Jeff Wilson, he plays on maybe third downs as like a pass catcher in a 3-man committee with Mostert leading it, Achane kind of the 8 to 10 touches back that schemed up big plays. I don't know. I think he's more valuable because he's a direct backup to Raheem Mostert. If Mostert were to get injured, I think he's valuable because he looked good and he plays in one of the best offenses in football. But the waiver wire isn't really offering us a ton of juicy options, in my opinion, this week, especially at running back.
I know it's not great on waivers, but we talked about this last week or when we all three did waivers together. It's like, dude, handcuff season, like that wide receiver on the team that hasn't started for your fantasy team in like 7 weeks and only has like one good week here and there, like just drop him for somebody like Jeff Wilson. Like even if you're not starting Jeff Wilson, it's just make sure you add guys like this because we've seen Raheem Mostert like get banged up a little bit this year. Devon Achane missing time, Salvon Ahmed on IR, and it's a very clear offensive rotational back. So better to have them than not have them, honestly. How much could it really hurt you?
It's slim pickings on the wire for running backs.
My guy.
It's rough. The next guy that I have here is Denver running back Semaje Perine. He's rostered in 22% of leagues. For fab bids for Jeff Wilson, by the way, like 2 to 3%. Semaje Perine, most I'd go up is like 5%. He had the 33rd most valuable role in week 12. He played 25% of the snaps. He had 18% of the attempts, 28% of the routes, and 5% of the targets. He got a goal line carry because Javonte Williams hurt his neck. He got a stinger. So he got that goal line carry when Williams was out, and he scored a touchdown. So he finished with 14 fantasy points. He had 14 fantasy points the week before because he was the primary pass catcher in that catch-up 2-minute offense they had where Russ just kept dumping it down to him. This is a three-headed committee. Jaleel McLaughlin continues to play. Did he actually start to take a little bit of snap share from McLaughlin this week?
It looked like it towards the end of the game. I felt like it was a lot more of Javonte and Semaje rather than Jaleel.
So rough. It does look like Semaje has supplanted McLaughlin as the primary guy, but Javonte played 70% of the snaps, McLaughlin 15%, and Semaje squeezed in here at 27. So it looks like Semaje is the number 2. Javonte is the clear guy in this offense that you want. But when you have someone like James Cook out on a bye, whatever the starting running back for the Chicago Bears out on a bye, if you have the Ravens running backs out on a bye, you need to get a little bit creative this week. And I think Perine is someone with a degree of confidence that you could throw into your lineup in PPR and you feel like he could score 8 points because of his role. Like if the Broncos are trailing against the Texans in week 13, I feel pretty confident that Perine's like a lock for 4 to 5 targets as they play catch up and it's just dump off mode to Perine. So that's where I'm at with Perine. He offers basically no upside in my opinion, but if you wanted to just slide him in your lineup because you have buys and you're in a tough spot, I feel pretty good about it. Aidan, thoughts on your guy, Perine?
Yeah, I think just scrolling down too, taking a look at his schedule, a couple generous matchups coming up. You've got Houston, then the Chargers beyond that. Detroit even has been pretty generous. So, getting, 13 plus, 15 against Cleveland feels like a big dub. I wouldn't really bank on any type of touchdown production from him, but it's really the pass catching for him. So, yeah, a negative game script, or I guess positive in that sense, against Houston where they're losing would be pretty ideal for Perine if you've got to plug him in next week. Just kind of pray he gets 4 or 5 targets, gives you a couple catches. If you're lucky, he scores. But yeah, Perine isn't exactly who I thought he was going to be. But, the last few weeks, he's kind of proven himself to be, at least streamable. He's not completely untouchable like he was, kind of in the middle of the season.
The last guy that I have at running back is Zack Moss. So Zack Moss is rostered in 48% of leagues. So he's probably owned in the league you play in. But if he's not, Zack Moss quietly had the 35th most valuable role in week 12, and he played 40% of the snaps. It's kind of surreal to think he played 40% of the snaps in week 12 and kind of a must-win game for the Colts. He had 30% of the attempts, 31% of the routes, and 7% of the targets. I get it. He carried this team at the beginning of the year when JT was hurt, but Steichen's insistence in playing Moss, it almost cost the Colts this game. Did you watch Bucks Colts where they kept throwing it? They kept having Zack Moss in the game, and I was like, why aren't they just putting this game on ice and giving it to JT? And the minute they started giving it to JT, like the game was over. So I don't know what this means going forward. I don't know if they're just trying to play it safe with JT because they're trying to make sure he's healthy with a healthy Anthony Richardson next year. I don't know what is going on there. Because Moss is on the field so much and he's such a part of the offense. I feel like you have to roster him. And especially considering if anything happens to JT, he's vaulting back up into like top 15 running back play. I just don't get Steichen. Like Steichen's an incredible coach, so I'm not trying to like nitpick Steichen at all. But the insistence on Moss, considering how good JT has looked, in my opinion, I don't get it. But hey, we're not trying to predict what coaches should do. We're trying to predict what they will do. And from what we've seen here, it seems like Zack Moss continues to be a part of this offense. So I think he should be rostered. Thoughts on Zack Moss here before we go into some dart throws at running back?
Yeah, I don't know. JT looked so good. The only
it.
way I'm really owning him is if I probably have JT. I don't know, like you're kind of just like not obviously wishing for an injury, but like without JT getting hurt, I don't know how much standalone value he has personally, but he should be rostered.
Dart throws I have D'Ernest Johnson or D'Ernest Johnson. D'Ernest of the Jaguars. He's the backup to Travis Etienne. Tank Bigsby doesn't play, which is
who?
Brutal. Which is brutal for the Tank Bigsby truthers. And the other guy I have is Royce Freeman. I know everyone just looked at what Kyron did, and we all love King Kyron. I'm a fan, trust me. But Royce Freeman, he played on 34% of the snaps in week 12. He had 13 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown. So a lot of that came in garbage time, I understand, but he is the clear backup here to Kyron Williams. So I think you need to roster him, and I think he's going to get some run too in games. He might be an interesting little bye week fill-in as well with a matchup against Cleveland that's super banged up right now in that defense. Any other dart throws before we transition to wide receivers?
No, I think that kind of covers running back.
Oh, how are we handling the people who have dropped Chuba Hubbard because of last week, and then now this week there is probably Chuba Hubbard available on the waiver, and now there's new coaching. What's your advice for Chuba Hubbard / Miles Sanders? Because his rostership is still good, but I know he got dropped by a lot of people after the week prior, and then obviously he has a decent week again, and then Miles Sanders doesn't have a good week, but gets a lot of touches. So
it's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare.
Chuba's better, right? Like I think it's safe to say Chuba's a better running back at this point in this offense. I have no idea what to predict. If Chuba Hubbard's out there on the wire, you should pick him up, though. He's rostered in 62% of leagues.
Sure.
If he's available, go snap him up, put him on your roster. I think that he's going to continue to be the 1A, but Deuce Staley and Josh McCown are now gone. They have a new play caller. They have a new head coach. So could be a complete coin flip. Like we may see some Miles Sanders alpha run where he's now the primary running back. So have fun predicting that. That's all I'm going to say. Go pick him up. Go pick him up, though. Nice little dart throws. You started him this week. You need help.
Keaton Mitchell wave happened, and then he doesn't get any run, and it's back to the Gus Bus show. And then this week, obviously, Keaton Mitchell way out snaps and Gus Bus. Fantasy running backs are a nightmare.
We knew Gus was a negative regression candidate, it was coming. But yeah, it was crazy to see Gus effectively benched. Justice Hill played over him, which is kind of crazy to see. We appreciate you, as always, for being a part of this community, watching these videos, engaging with us in the comments. If you haven't had a chance yet and you're new to this channel, or you've came back to these videos a couple of times, or if you're part of the 70% of the people that watch these videos and don't subscribe to our channel, go ahead, subscribe to this channel. It's the number one way you can support us. The channel is completely free. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. That's our goal before the end of the season. We'd love to make that happen, but we can't do it without you. But moving on here to wide receivers, Aidan, why don't you tell us who to pick up here?
Yep, I think the first guy, I think we've talked about him for 10 straight weeks. His rostership only keeps growing little by little. This is Shaun's best guy here, and it is none other than Jayden Reed.
It's my guy.
The rostership is still too low. Season high 8 targets. The guy's gone over 15 in 3 games in a row, scoring in 2 of those. Jordan Love feels like he's kind of figuring things. He started quite well in the season and then had, about a month, maybe month plus of some pretty awful QB play. But the last few weeks have actually been pretty solid for him, which obviously is starting to benefit some of those pass catchers. I know a lot of people will highlight Christian Watson. Great game for Christian Watson. It feels like, finally something happened to him. But I think Jayden Reed is probably the guy you want. I think he has such a safer floor in terms of the easy touches, design touches that he's getting. So, Jayden Reed, dude, still at 55% is too low. I think this Chiefs game is going to be interesting. They're going to keep it closer than I think most people think. The Chiefs just aren't playing very good offense. They obviously have a good defense as well right now. But I don't know. I see that game being close. And if Jordan Love can kind of continue where he left off on Thanksgiving, Jayden Reed can find himself again for a pretty solid game.
I love Jayden Reed. 73% of the snaps. You love to see it.
The snap share just keeps rising with him. The second guy that I think a lot of people, or not a lot of people, kind of forgot about, he's still at 68% rostership, is Josh Downs. Feels like he's kind of healthy again, and he kind of showed this week. He had 13 targets. We'd obviously like to see him catching more than 5 of those. That's not a great catch rate in terms of the targets, but pretty encouraging to see. I think he's the clear number 2 pass catcher in that offense. Michael Pittman has exceeded all of my expectations for him this year, and I'll completely own that. But I think this offense is good enough to support 2 pass catchers, whether it's, both of them on the same week or kind of, back and forth. I think Josh Downs, definitely worth getting back on your rosters now that he's looking healthier going into the playoff stretch here.
Josh Downs, 66% rostered. If he's out there, probably in a work league or something, go snap him up. Definitely looks like he has a nice stretch to end the season and a juicy matchup against Tennessee in week 13. Who else do you have here, Aidan?
Yeah, I've got 2 more real ones, and then I got a dart throw. I've got Curtis Samuel. This pass catching room is so hard to figure out, but the dude absolutely went crazy this week. 9 of 12 targets, 100 yards. It really does feel like he's the number 2 pass catcher in that offense. Dotson still found the end zone and was okay this week, but it feels like when he's out there, he's the clear second option in terms of the wide receivers behind Terry McLaurin. Some weeks, like last week, he was the number 1 wide receiver option. So, again, Washington's going to continue to sling the ball against Miami too. That figures to be a game that they're going to be trailing in. So I see Curtis Samuel actually having another pretty good week. They're probably going to throw the balls 40 plus times, and I'd be shocked if he's not getting at least 5, 6, even upwards of 8 or 10 of those targets.
Keegan, your thoughts on Curtis Samuel? I know he made you pretty angry on Thursday.
It just doesn't make any sense that he's the preferred option at wide receiver. I don't.
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't really comprehend.
He's good.
He might be good, but he's not as good as Terry McLaurin, and he's. I think him and Jahan Dotson are different skill sets. So, but Curtis Samuel seems to get what I believe Jahan Dotson should get. I think, any of these players are good dart throws on a week-to-week basis because of how much Sam Howell throws the football. So I don't hate picking up Curtis Samuel. And Eric Bieniemy is deploying the Chiefs wide receiver by committee thing every week for Washington. So why not have one of these guys? Somebody on the Washington Commanders is going to put up 15 points that week. Somebody is. So you've got a 1 in 3 chance of their wide receivers doing that. So I like picking up Curtis Samuel.
Samuel has been a pleasant surprise this season. Got a little banged up there against the Eagles, I believe, and he's kind of been working his way back. Rostered in 39% of leagues, he definitely should be on your radar, especially in a high-scoring matchup week 13 against Miami. Who's your next guy here, Aidan?
Yeah, I've got the Dortcher chamber. Dortch. Somewhere between serious and dart throw because we're 1 game away from being serious, but it still probably leans dart throw. Back-to-back games with over 8 targets, 10 plus fantasy points, got in the end zone too. I don't know. This isn't what I expected at all in terms of the wide receiver room. Trey McBride is still being Trey McBride, which is awesome. But I didn't see a world where Greg Dortch was the preferred wide receiver ahead of both Marquise and Rondale. So I don't know. Yeah, he got more targets. He actually outgained him this week too. But you have to 8 plus targets in 2 games in a row. Kyler Murray's clearly looking his way. I don't know where he kind of falls in line in terms of those pass catchers. McBride included, he's probably 3 at best. But I don't know.
Michael
I think the
Wilson
Cardinals
comes back too, and I
it's
will
a
say
little
this:
confusing.
Tanking Cardinals down the stretch, it's got Dortcher chamber written all over it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's week 15, and it's Greg Dortch had 16 targets. I would not be shocked. And he's rostered in 8% of leagues. If you have a last bench spot, I mean, this guy, in fantasy points expected usage in PPR. He had the 12th most valuable role in fantasy last week in PPR.
Wild.
So,
and then
get Dortch.
Last guy I've got. This is a flyer. What is he going on by this week? Yeah, he's going on by this week. Jalin Hyatt, worth the stash. Yeah, Jalin Hyatt, by far his best game in the NFL this year. Season high in targets, catches, and yards. Got over the 100-yard mark too. Danny DeVito's starting to play slightly more competent football the last 2 weeks. The dude looks like a total pumpkin his first couple games, but like could actually support some players down the stretch here. And, Jalin Hyatt is always one catch away from a house call. So this is worth a stash depending on how deep of a bench you've got and kind of where your season is. Like if you're kind of sitting in like buy position, like this is absolutely worth taking a flyer on. This is kind of like how we described like Jayden Reed a couple weeks ago. Shaun was like, if you're in a good spot, like go ahead and go find a league winner. This guy's 4.3 speed could potentially have that down the stretch here as, just look at the snaps too. Like they're starting to trust him more. Everything's kind of trending in the right direction here with DeVito's play. So I like Jalin Hyatt. He is going on bye though. So, prioritize other people if you need a win. If not, go toss him at the bottom of your bench and, see what he can do down the stretch against some, okay passing defenses in the playoffs.
Having your breakout game as a rookie the week before you go on bye, as your team has really no reason to play for anything more than your development down the stretch, is kind of the perfect situation for Hyatt.
Yep.
He comes out of the bye. They're going to get him more targets, more snaps, and they're going to give him the next 6 weeks of the year to develop. I think it's a perfect spot for him. So I love him. He's a great pickup this week. I don't really want to get too excited about anyone in this Giants offense, but Aidan already hinted at it. Tommy DeVito's playing a lot better. He actually looks like someone who could, be a backup quarterback in the NFL for a while. Like it's not great, but we've seen a lot of backup quarterbacks this year, and he's not the worst one, which is kind of hilarious if you think about it in a vacuum.
I don't know how much that's saying, but I can agree with what you are saying.
I just hit the Kawhi laugh there. All right. No one laughed at that. Oh God, I'm going to edit that out. Should I? I don't know.
No, the mean team will like that.
Oh no. Okay. I had a couple dart throws. I had Elijah Moore as somebody worth picking up. Roster 47% of leagues. He continues to see a lot of targets. He's seen 7+ targets 3 weeks in a row. He had 9 last week, only 5 fantasy points. There's a term for that, right? If you see a lot of looks, you had a bad week. If you see a lot of looks the next week, he may be regressing his mean next week. Amari Cooper's injured.
Our good pal Troy Aikman said regressing the mean on the broadcast tonight.
We love
Troy, friend of the program.
I don't know if you guys heard that, but yeah, friend of the program, Troy Aikman said regress to the mean on national television. So
between him just shit talking Justin Fields, he talks so much shit on Fields tonight.
He fucking hates Justin Fields.
I was like,
dude.
bruh. Okay, pick up Elijah Moore. Amari Cooper's hurt. Go pick him up. That was, I think, my other one. I think I had the Dortch Chamber and Elijah Moore is two of my dart throws. Keegan, do you have any dart throws at wide receiver before we jump to the next position?
No, I don't think I have any dart throws. I said it last week, but A.T. Perry deserves a look again. They're so banged up at wide receiver. I actually thought he would have a good opportunity last week to kind of show some of his stuff, but it didn't quite come to fruition for him. The looks weren't there. He just wasn't earning targets. It was kind of a cardio game.
He cardioed it up.
Because he played 75% of snaps or something like that.
He cardioed it up, but he had 75% of the snaps.
Yeah.
We're going to take that, especially Detroit, who just got Christian Watson looked like one of the worst players in the NFL, and it was his major bounce back week.
Yeah, Detroit has become a very friendly matchup. I'm not advising A.T. Perry as a start, but he's worth another look again as a stash, as their whole room is banged up right now. So somebody's got to catch passes, and it's going to be him or Lynn Bowden is on the squad.
Oh, no. Lynn Bowden Jr. is on the Saints?
Yeah, bro. I think that was the guy who was the other wide receiver. Yeah. Look at that.
Oh, remember the Raiders
He's a
drafted that
converted
guy.
QB, right?
Yeah, the Raiders drafted that guy and traded him within like 2 months. They were just like, we're done with him. They drafted him. He was from Kentucky, right? Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wild.
That's
Wild.
Yeah, so
exciting.
that's who you're looking at for pass catchers. So
Does he have a face tattoo? Oh my, he has like a. Is that a smudge on my computer screen? or is that
okay,
a
on to the next
teardrop?
one. I'm sorry. I started the Lynn Bowden
Lynn
conversation.
Bowden.
Ooh, and I just bought a jersey. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Look what Daddy
Uh-oh.
did.
It made it in the cart. We do not care. Okay, that's it for wide receiver. Here we have a wide range of guys that are probably taken or they're free on the wire. In terms of fab bids, I haven't been really calling them out. I don't know. How much fab do you have left? Maybe dump the bag for valuable guys. Keep doling out $1 to $2 bids probably at this point for
Yeah,
guys that aren't that
defenses and
valuable.
stuff.
Trust your discretion here. Honestly, a defensive streamer probably is more valuable at this point than some of the guys we're calling out here. But it's just something to keep in mind with your fab bids. Trust that discretion here. Moving on to quarterbacks. Keegan, who are we picking up at QB?
All right. So I've got two guys that I think should be picked up, not just for this week, but also for the kind of just remainder of the season as good people to have. But you already brought up the buys, but QBs that are on a bye week that you're trying to replace are Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Justin Fields, Joshua Dobbs, Tommy DeVito, and Aidan O'Connell. Now, the bottom three are not the same as the top three by any means, but that's a lot of decent quarterback play you're missing out on. I think the first guy that you have to prioritize is probably Jordan Love. Owned in 52% of sleeper leagues, so he's probably available in some of your leagues. Honestly, 52% is not overwhelming. This is a guy he's QB9 on the season. I feel like he should be hired a much higher roster percentage on sleeper. He has 7 top 12 QB finishes back-to-back weeks right now with 20 fantasy points and multiple touchdowns in both of those matchups. You guys talked about Jayden Reed already. Like, their receiving core is looking pretty good right now. You know, Wicks has been a nice addition for them. Jayden Reed's been a really good rookie. Like, him and Wicks have been pretty good. And then Christian Watson just finally had a good game. Romeo Dobbs been a good red zone target. Like, they have a lot of pretty good pass catchers. This matchup isn't perfect, but it's not the worst. They're going up against the Chiefs this week. They're about the middle of the league in fantasy points allowed to the QB position. But on top of that, it's just like a really good quarterback this late in the season that's probably still on the waivers. And I say good in terms of, you know, fantasy QB play. And then who's he is the Giants next, right?
He has KC, Giants, Tampa, Carolina, Minnesota, Chicago. So it's not necessarily a murderer's row here for Love down the stretch.
Yeah,
and they're in playoff positioning too.
This is a good quarterback. And the roster ship's a little bit high, but I mean, when you think about it, there's only 12 quarterbacks that are typically rostered in a league at any given time because there's 12 people who feel like, you know, starting. But if you've got a fringe guy who's been up and down, like, make sure Jordan Love is rostered. I'm sure he is, but I had to call that out. Next guy would be Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford is just like, this is a career pedigree pickup, I think, for me, because he's got a really good or a really bad matchup against Cleveland, but they do have a banged up Myles Garrett. So we'll need to see more details on that. But without game wrecker Myles Garrett, that changes the matchup. But he did throw 4 touchdowns. I know it was the Cardinals, but 4 touchdowns. We've been talking about Matt Stafford regressing all year, and it finally happened, and he puts up 4.
None of them to Puka or Cooper Cup.
No,
Yeah.
Kyron, Kyron Higbee, and the Tutu had his big game.
Yeah, so that was brutal because, of course, they only went to Tyler Higbee and Kyron Williams, but I digress. But I think he's a better option than like deep flyer people like Kenny Pickett or Jake Browning. Just like, obviously, this is Matt Stafford we're talking about here. He's still got a good receiving core to work with. Kyron Williams is back, and they get that playmaker in their offense. And I just think you could do a lot worse. But those are 2 guys that I'd likely look towards as kind of priority people, or, you know, top of the bottom. Like, they're not top 12 quarterback plays this week, but I feel like they're right on the outside of it. So any thoughts on those guys before I give you some dart throws as well, or other names?
I like both of them.
Yeah, I'd probably prefer Love out of the 2, just given like the rushing upside with him. Last week we saw it a bit. I know it's been a couple weeks since he kind of used his legs, but yeah, I think I'd probably lean him. But I like both of these guys.
It's just crazy that Stafford threw 4 touchdowns and only scored 24 fantasy points.
I know, dude.
So it was, but hey, look, Stafford looked pretty good. They're in the playoff hunt too, so it's kind of nice. Like both these teams are 5-6. The Vikings look like they're trending down. The Seahawks really look like they're trending down. Both these teams really have something to play for. Their playmakers all look healthy. Their offensive lines are getting healthy. I think they're 2 good offenses worth investing in right now. So I like both the quarterbacks in them.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say Stafford's schedule for playoffs is perfect, but look, like I said, there's kind
Washington.
of worse up there.
Washington, Giants, New Orleans. That's not bad. We'll take it.
Some quick hits. 2 guys with rostership over 50% are Russ and Baker Mayfield. Now, Russ has only had a 20-point outing like in week 4. But he's got a really solid floor for a streaming QB. He's averaging around like 16.5 points the last 4 games. And he's got some really friendly matchups on the horizon. He's got Houston, then the Chargers, then Detroit. We also saw Russ kind of start cooking with his feet a little bit. So I really like Russ as a potential flyer as well, too.
I'm in on Russ. I'm streaming him because Lamar's on a bye this week. So I'm playing him this week against Houston. I think it's a good matchup.
Yeah, and him and Baker are so
consistent.
Similar too. Oh yeah, go ahead, Aidan.
Both of them. Yeah, to your point, like you kind of beat me to it. Like it's just like super consistent with these guys. It's like you're pretty much just like penciling in 15 points every week. Maybe you get your way up to 20, but like they're not going to completely give you like an absolute, sub 5 egg. Like I think you kind of know what you're getting, and just looking at these guys week over week scores, it's so consistent with these 2.
Yeah, Baker throwing 2 touchdowns this week, but an INT, like he would have been at 15 points had he not thrown an interception. But him and Mike Evans are low key cooking, and like when you have a receiver like Mike Evans, like you're not guaranteeing, but there's an opportunity for him to throw a 70-yard touchdown every week. The 70 yards on one play. Like I really like those odds, obviously. And Baker gets a little rushing going too. And then the lowest owned guy I think you should take a look at is Gardner Minshew. He got his third rushing touchdown of the year this week.
And he does that stupid little titty shake when he scores too.
Look, it's me. Annoying. I'm Gardner Minshew. It's just me. Pick me up on the waiver.
He's got a matchup with Tennessee. That's a fire matchup. Wow.
Yeah, so he's got Tennessee next week. He's getting about 15 points again. Like this is again solid floor. He threw for 251 yards and INT and put up like almost 15 points. So Tennessee's allowed the 8th most points to quarterbacks in weeks 8 through 11. So I feel like it's another good look.
He has high highs and super low lows, where like
That's
Baker and Russ are far more consistent.
Super volatile.
I will say too, if you're starting Baker Mayfield, you get the Mike Evans legacy 1-yard touchdown throws. All as a Rashad White owner who back-to-back weeks, I'm just destroyed because first down, they just run the Mike Evans go ball. And it's, Mike Evans is like the best at running that on the 1-yard line. But it's just like Mike Evans Hall of Fame legacy. We're getting him the ball on the 1-yard line. It's insane. Mike Evans is unreal, but you always have that in play. They're throwing at the 1-yard line with Baker. So that's always fun to keep in mind.
I love it. Yeah, that's what quarterbacks I kind of have for recommendations. I would stay away from, I think, Browning and Pickett, guys like that. I mean, if you're in a pinch, maybe, but I would try and avoid that. I feel like these 5 I just suggested are probably the best options out there.
So what are the tight ends for us, Keegan?
Tight ends, I think there's one that matters, and it's Pat Freiermuth. We talked about this a little bit ago, but he had a first bad game coming off of IR, but after Matt was banished. Yeah. After Matt was banished to Canada, Freiermuth was pretty big. 11 targets, 9 catches, 120 yards. I mean, that's the most catches by any player on the Steelers this season in a single game.
He was incredible. I watched.
He scored 21 points without a touchdown. He was all over the place.
And we knew he had it in him. We know this guy's a good player, but it was just hilarious that how much better Pickett looked so much more comfortable yesterday.
I'm sorry.
Everything about the offense.
I didn't even really do fab bids for quarterbacks because I think, Shaun, you put it to a good point. Like, you don't have much fab left at the season, but throw in $1 or $2 to make sure you get a quarterback that you want. Maybe aggressive on Jordan Love, but be aggressive on Pat Freiermuth. Like if you're starting like Kate Otten every week, or like Tyler Conklin, like whoever it may be. If you don't have one of the top guys, like be aggressive with Pat Freiermuth. Like this is the time to spend whatever remaining budget you've got left and secure up a spot that's really hard to get. I mean, the floor for Pat Freiermuth is all of a sudden like top 10 tight end every week. So
if they're going to be passing as much as they did and getting as many yards as they did against the Bengals week in and week out, and now they have matchups against Arizona, New England, Indianapolis, they totally can, by the way, because the schedule's pretty cake rest of season.
Bro, Arizona just let Tyler Higbee score 2 touchdowns.
You got to pick up Freiermuth. Like he's a must pick up for me this week.
And the rest of these guys, I would almost all consider dart throws. I guess maybe the next safe one would be Gerald Everett for purposes of being next to a really good quarterback. I don't even know if I would call the Chargers a good offense right now, but he did catch their lone touchdown in week 12, 4 passes, 43 yards. You know, if he's healthy, he's at the best, most talented tight end on the roster, and no offense to Parham, but QJ might be getting benched for performance-related issues at this point.
He
not
was.
just injuries.
He got benched for performance. Yeah, straight up.
If we're going to bench QJ, if Jalen Guyton's hurt, if it's only Keenan Allen, like I like my odds of adding Gerald Everett as a tight end play for me. They've got a Patriots matchup this week, which is a little bit brutal, but they have 2+ matchups against the Broncos and Raiders the following week. So we're like top 8 in points per game allowed to the tight end position. So good stretch run pickup here.
Everett's good. Every time Everett catches the ball, I'm like, that guy should get more targets. Like that guy looks good. I don't get it. Yeah. I really don't get it.
I like watching him run around in number 7 too. It kind of breaks my brain every time. It's just like he looks faster.
It's sick.
All right, and then let's just get it out of the way.
Wait. No. Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at something else. Yeah, no,
you guys will never quit him.
No, I don't have much
Canadian Football League.
8.9 and 8.5. Kate Otten, 35% rostered. Go pick him up.
The next guy that I have is Jawan Johnson. Also, same thing we said about A.T. Perry, but like their pass catchers are banged up. It's really bad for them. So. 7 targets though. 7 targets.
I mean, if he's on the wire, if someone dropped Taysom, this is going to be a God mode game from Taysom Hill. I'm planting my flag on this. If Taysom Hill's out there in the waiver wire, pick him up. They have no receivers. Derek Carr is actively bad. This is the Taysom Hill game. You're going to remember this.
That. Oh, you're going to remember this. Last one, Tucker Kraft.
Yes, that is a great dart throw here. Tucker Kraft Hive on Twitter was shocking, to say the least.
Is there a timeline on Musgrave and his kidney?
It's IR, I think. I think he ended up on IR.
Is it? I didn't see where. Yeah, it's a lacerated kidney, right?
Yes, he is. His uncertain for the remainder of 2023.
Okay, yeah.
Tucker Kraft, 96% of the snaps. He did catch a touchdown, only 2 targets, but we know how this offense works.
He's kind of good.
They love to distribute it. They love to distribute the rock, and I think he's going to continue to see some looks.
Dude, Twitter would have you believing that Tucker Kraft was the Kyle Pitts that was promised if you went to the right circles online.
Tucker Kraft Hive was shocking. It was shocking to see the Tucker.
It's like
Tucker
Tank Bigsby levels of support. I was shocked.
It was crazy. I was like, really? Someone was calling him Dallas Goedert, and I was like, I don't think he looks like Dallas Goedert. He looked like Cole Kmet. He looked like a good tight end. But I was like, I don't know about Dallas Goedert.
He was like Jeremy Shockey if Jeremy Shockey didn't have tattoos and a bad attitude.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, that's it for the Week 13 waiver wire. Plenty of good options out there. If you have any questions, comments, drop them in the comments below. We appreciate you for tuning in. And until next time.